This is a film that will bring tears to everyone's eyes. If you've caught this video, then be sure to have tissues handy, because you can see yourself in this film. 7-year-old Mike is a very vain person. His mother has to work hard because her business is bankrupt, so she has to send Mike to her mother. Mike, who is used to a good life, is resistant to everything here. There were bugs crawling all around the house. There were cobwebs all along the windows. When he first arrived at home, Mike washed his grandmother's shoes. The shoes were older than he was. It was the only pair of shoes Grandma had ever owned. Not only was she not angry, she even took the initiative to show Mike her affection. Mike had a very disgusted look on his face. Anna, who hadn't been home for years, had only brought her mother a box of supplements and a snack that Mike had brought with him. Anna then hurriedly left in the car. She left her elderly mother and her uneducated child behind. Grandma tried to drag Mike back into the house, but Mike raised his arm to warn her not to touch me. Silly boy. Granny can't talk. She apologized with a gesture, but Mike continued to complain about her. At the end of the day, Granny prepared 2 dishes for Mike. Mike didn't like what he saw. He ate the canned beef he had brought with him. Granny kindly offered him a piece of food. Mike rushed to return the whole dish with rice. He looked like the dish was poisoned. At night, when he goes to bed, Mike, who didn't know any better, kept playing games. Grandma lay on the floor and couldn't sleep. Finally, she fell asleep. Then Mike woke her up to go to the toilet. The next day, the neighborhood kids came to play with him, but he refused outright. He acted like he was above it all. He preferred to be left alone to play with his toys, skating alone in the house. When he was tired, he would lie down on the floor and continue playing. He didn't do any chores all day. Grandma had to keep cleaning up after him. This day, Mike finally spoke to his grandmother. Granny took out her empty pocket and showed him. Mike was so angry that he rummaged around for money. He was the most ignorant child I've ever met. Because his grandmother couldn't afford to buy batteries for him, he threw a fit of rage. He kicked out the teapot she had just washed. It fell heavily to the ground and broke into pieces. Not only that, he also threw away her shoes which she had worn for over 10 years. When she went to the mountains to collect water, she had to go barefoot. At lunchtime when she was napping, Mike quietly took Grandma's silver hairpin. He wanted to trade it for 2 batteries for a game console, but Mike went to several shops but couldn't get any batteries, and he got lost. Luckily, he met a kind uncle and took him back to his grandmother's house. She asked him what he wanted for dinner. Mike gestured to his grandmother with the sign for fried chicken. Granny seemed to understand, so she took the herbs she had worked so hard for and went out. Not long after that, Grandma came back in the rain with the chicken. When she got home, Grandma worked for another 2 hours. She called to Mike to get up for dinner. Mike was being a little grumpy again. I want fried chicken, no white chicken. He kept complaining about his grandmother, but she didn't know how many hills she had to walk for his meal and how long it rained. And finally, Mike threw his bowl of rice in anger. He cried under the covers. At the end of the day, Mike was hungry. He ate. The next day, because of the rain, Grandma got sick. Mike finally did something nice. He helped his grandmother with a quilt. When she got well, she limped and took Mike to the market. Grandma sits alone on the floor and sells her wares in sign language. Mike was ashamed of himself. He watched from a distance as she sold her herbs all afternoon, just enough to buy Mike a pair of shoes. She's the best grandma I've ever met. She would spend days of her savings for her grandson to have a bowl of fried noodles. When she was hungry, she would drink some water to satisfy her hunger. Maybe that's selfless love. You want something, I'll do everything I can to give you what you want. Just because of one thing, we're related by blood. When we got in the car, Grandma asked Mike what else he wanted. Mike pointed to a child eating chocolate. Granny picked up the wrapper from the floor. She limped to the kiosk. The shopkeeper was Granny's best friend. Granny took out the wrapper and showed it to her. She stuck out 2 thumbs. Her best friend filled 4 of them for her and said she wouldn't give her any money. Granny had to exchange them for herbs. Said her best friend, while we're all still here, do remember to visit me again, because they really don't know when they'll see each other again. Both of us will still be alive. But when Grandma came back, Mike insisted that he would not ride in the car with his grandmother. Grandma tried to give Mike her luggage, but Mike refused. Mike sat on the ground for a long time after arriving at the station. Granny ended up walking back to save money. At this moment, Mike finally felt sorry for his grandmother. Granny saw Mike crying. She hurriedly drew a circle on her chest to say sorry. Mike took his grandmother's luggage. He even put a piece of chocolate in his bag secretly. That day, Mom wrote from the city. She said she had found a job and was taking Mike back. But what would happen if he left and Grandma got sick? So Mike started to teach Grandma how to write. But she was too old. She couldn't learn. Mike had to say,
할머니, 많이 아프면 그냥 아무것도 쓰지 말고 보내. 그럼 장우가 할머니가 부른 줄 알고 금방 달려올게. 응? 알았지?
As he said this, he burst into tears. I could see that Max had really understood. Grandma was in tears too, because with her grandson gone, I don't know if I'll be able to wait for his next visit. At this age, it's a luxury to see your family. Before he left, Mike put on all the stitches for his grandmother. The next day, Mike followed his mother on the bus to the city. Grandma knocked on the window to say goodbye to Mike, but at that moment, Mike felt very sad. He didn't know how to face this parting. Just as the bus started, Mike ran to the back of the bus crying, and like his grandmother, he drew circles on his chest, saying sorry, and just like that, Mike disappeared from Granny's sight. Looking at Granny's lonely back, I couldn't help but feel, as soon as we turn our backs, we're apart. One parting. Perhaps it was a parting of the ways of life and death. The short time we've spent together has changed him from dislike to reluctance. He grew up in the countryside. He made his own mistakes, but he was tolerated by his grandmother. No pretense of melodrama. His kind grandmother loved him with all her heart, until she began to understand the hardships of her grandmother. A fusion of love and affection, a sincere repentance, a life moment to learn from. After watching this film, I just want to say one thing to everyone: come home often, even if it's just washing the dishes for the elderly.